You know, when you think of America's national parks, you think of freedom, of wildness, of just breathtaking beauty. But there's a dark paradox to these incredible places. For some people who go in, they're not a place of discovery. They're a place where you can vanish. I mean, think about it. Every single year, millions upon millions of us flock to these parks. We're talking about the epic cliffs of Yosemite, those ancient giant sequoias, the misty views in the Great Smoky Mountains. It's this quintessential American experience, right? A way to connect with something powerful and real. But here's the thing. For a small but very real number of these visitors, the trail just stops. They walk into that beautiful wilderness and they are never heard from again, leaving behind nothing but questions and families with broken hearts. This is the hidden, unsettling side of our most beloved landscapes. A search and rescue expert, Ken Phillips, he put it perfectly with this quote. I mean, we're talking about millions of acres, dense forests, treacherous canyons, mountains that are just unbelievably rugged. Once a person goes missing out there, the odds of finding them drop dramatically with every single hour that ticks by. So just how big is this problem, really? Well, thanks to a Freedom of Information Act request, we have some idea. In just one 5-year period, there were over 1,180 missing person reports filed in U.S. national parks. Now, most of those people were found, thankfully. But that number, it really shows you how often visitors get into serious trouble. But what about the ones who are still missing, the cold cases? Well, 1,600 is a conservative number. Some independent researchers think the real figure is way higher. And part of the problem, part of the mystery, is that the National Park Service doesn't actually have a single public centralized database for all these cases. It's like a puzzle with no official record of all the pieces. And you'll notice these incidents aren't spread out evenly, not at all. Certain parks are definite hotspots. If you look at just 2018 to 2020, the Grand Canyon and Yosemite each had over 700 search and rescue incidents. Rocky Mountain National Park isn't far behind. The massive scale and the truly unforgiving terrain in these places make them as dangerous as they are beautiful. Okay, so those numbers are just huge. But numbers can feel abstract, right? To really get what's going on, to feel the human side of this, we need to zoom in on just one case. And this is maybe one of the most famous and heartbreaking disappearances in the history of the national parks. Picture this. It's Father's Day weekend, June 1969. The Martin family is on their yearly trip to the Great Smoky Mountains. 6-year-old Dennis is playing a little game with his brother and some other kids. The idea was simple, just snake up and give the adults a friendly scare. It was a completely normal, happy family moment. And this is where it gets terrifyingly fast. At 4 o'clock, Dennis ducks behind a bush. Just 5 minutes later, his family realizes he's not there and they start calling for him. An hour later, a huge rainstorm hits, washing away any tracks, any scent. It took until 8:30 that night for his grandfather to finally reach a ranger station to get help. What came next was one of the biggest searches the park had ever seen. 1,400 people scouring 56 square miles. And the result? Absolutely nothing. Not a single trace. He was just gone. Now, as heartbreaking as this story is, the failure to find Dennis Martin did lead to one major positive change. The search was so huge, but also so chaotic and uncoordinated that it became a national wake-up call. Because of what happened, the National Park Service completely revamped its search and rescue methods, creating the organized, modern systems that are still saving lives today. But then you have cases that, well, they go from tragic to just plain weird. Take Kenny Veach. He was an adventurer, a YouTuber who was looking for this strange M-shaped cave out in the Nevada desert. He said when he got near it, it made his whole body vibrate. He posted a video about it, went back to find it again, and he was never seen again. All they found was his cell phone near an old mine shaft. It just goes to show you, these cases run the gamut from tragically understandable to deeply strange. So that's the big question, right? What is really going on with all these people?
The answers? Well, they tend to fall into two very different categories. The ones that make perfect sense and the ones that are just baffling.
Basically, it boils down to two camps. On one side, you have the rational, logical reasons. I mean, these are wild places and accidents happen. But on the other side, you've got researchers pointing to these really weird patterns that pop up in case after case. Strange details that just don't seem to add up and kind of defy any simple explanation.
Okay, so let's start with the logical stuff. And honestly, it makes a ton of sense. The terrain is brutal, the weather can turn on a dime, causing confusion, hypothermia, you could have a run-in with a bear or a mountain lion, people make mistakes, they get lost, they panic, and yeah, sometimes it's foul play or someone simply chose to walk away from their life. For most cases, the real reason is probably on this list.
But for a lot of people, those explanations just don't cover everything. And that's where this term comes in, missing 411. It was coined by a former detective named David Paulides. He spent years documenting the cases that don't fit that normal lost hiker story. And these are the cases that have sparked so many theories online.
So what are these baffling patterns that people talk about? Well, proponents of this idea, they point to a few really specific things, like cases where search dogs just suddenly lose the scent, cold, or victims, sometimes little kids, being found miles away across terrain they couldn't possibly have crossed. They also point out that a lot of these disappearances seem to happen near specific places, like boulder fields. And the thing that ties it all together for them is that lack of an official public database, which they believe hides these fairy patterns from view.
Okay, but it is absolutely crucial to bring in the other side of this. Data scientists like Kyle Polich have looked at all this, and they come to a very different conclusion. He argues that when you really crunch the numbers, the millions of visitors, the inherent dangers, these so-called clusters and weird details aren't statistically strange at all. They're what you'd expect. In his view, it's not some big, overarching mystery, but just a collection of many separate individual tragedies.
So, look, we've talked about the logical, the tragic, the bizarre. So what does this all mean for you? The most important thing here is how you can stay safe. Because knowledge really is your best defense out there.
And honestly, the best advice is stuff you've probably heard before, but it is so critical. It all starts before you even go. Research where you're headed, know the risks, and tell someone exactly what your plans are. Then, when you're on the ground, be smart. Stay on the marked trails. Pay attention. And finally, pack for the worst-case scenario. Extra food, extra water, navigation tools, and always be ready for that weather to turn. These simple things can be the difference between a great story and a tragic one.
So where does that leave us? Are these thousands of vanishings just the tragic but understandable cost of having these wild, unpredictable places, a result of our own human limits when we face the power of nature? Or do the truly strange patterns in the most baffling cases point to something more, something we just don't understand yet? That's the mystery that's still out there, haunting America's most beautiful landscapes.